after the class we can discuss this. Let us first continue with the topic that we left yesterday. So good afternoon all, and today we'll be continue our discussion on the various type of non-ferrous materials. In the last class, we looked at various non-ferrous alloys, right from the copper-based alloys to aluminum-based alloys, then magnesium, titanium-based alloys. So we looked at various nomenclature of the alloys, various dopants that are added into the alloys, and how the mechanical and other property changes, and where are the application of such alloys. Okay, so the type of alloys that we have basically looked at till now is about is about one metal being the main matrix, and there were other dopants. Okay, and based on that we had either ferrous and non-ferrous, and among non-ferrous we had copper, aluminum, magnesium, titanium, etc. based alloys, or family of those alloys uh, that has one element as the base, as the main element. Or so now the next one is basically what is known as the super alloys. Uh, so the super alloys are basically the alloys which have, I mean, very what is known as the high temperature, the combination of properties that are generally not attainable by any other alloy. Okay, so the definition goes like this: the superalloys have a superlative combination of properties. Most are used in turbine components, which must withstand the exposure to severely oxidizing environment. So one of the condition is severely oxidizing environment, means the component is operating at high temperatures and in the presence of in high temperatures in air or even in oxygen. So that is the severely oxidizing environment, and of course high temperatures for reasonable length of time. It's not like for a very small length of time or so, but it is quite elongated period of time. Those alloys should be able to withstand all these conditions, and if they are able to do so, then these are termed as the super alloys. So they have some, uh, superlative or very demanding kind. They perform in a demanding environment. So these are the super alloys, and there are basically three main groups. One is iron, nickel, and then cobalt. And other alloying elements include the refractory metals, for example, niobium, molybdenum, tungsten, tantalum, uh, and the chromium and titanium. So refractory metals, basically the metals having very high melting point, or which can withstand very high temperatures. Those are the refractory metals. So these refractory metals, the one niobium, tungsten and tantalum, they are added into iron, nickel. So this is binary. I mean, both iron and nickel are majority element in these, the nickel and cobalt. So if you look at the super alloys, so there is a nickel based. For example, we have Inconel as the name of the this super alloy. Then Nimconic, so Anarone, Udiment, Pyrrole, all these are the nickel based super alloys. Then iron based. So on the same lines we have these numbers as we have discussed for the other alloys. And then cobalt based alloys. I think this image has been shifted a bit. Okay, so these are the cobalt based alloys. What exactly, if you look at the, suppose this is the cross section of the turbine engine. Turbine engine, if you look at the type of the alloys, super alloys that are employed in the alloy, this turbine. Okay, so for example, titanium or nickel based alloys are used in the compressor. So this is the, from this side, this is the air intake into the turbine. So then basically this is a compressor. It takes the air from this, and from the very narrow channels the air is compressed. So so initial volume of the gas or air uh, uh, which is coming from the inlet, compressed into very narrow this thing, uh, and this in the compressor, this is a titanium and nickel based alloys are used, and in the compressor also titanium and nickel based alloys are used. And these are combustion chambers. So in the combustion chamber, once the air is compressed, it is burnt, and that's how it generates the thrust. The turbine blades, nozzle. So there are various sections where the nickel-based superalloys are used. Okay, once the fuel along with the air is burned, it generates very high pressure, high temperature, because air is coming. It's a oxidizing environment. So in these conditions, a normal alloy cannot withstand. But we have seen, whether it is iron, whether it is copper, magnesium, titanium, etc., they cannot uh, they cannot basically withstand all these severe oxidizing conditions. They are high temperature conditions. So therefore only the superalloys, the titanium or nickel based superalloys are basically used in these sections. This is one example. So what exactly is the, say, composition? Suppose we have listed quite a few alloys in this table here. So what exactly are the main dopant into the matrix? So for example, nickel and iron are the main these element in the, say, 286 and respectively 28 weight percent and 55.2 weight percent. So, and the other elements are, say, chromium and molybdenum. Now we can see, say, iron and nickel. So nickel is, say, hexagonal crystal structure, and iron is low temperature. It is BCC, and high temperature is FCC. So if we look at the phase of iron and nickel, so let us see. Okay, so this is the phase diagram of iron nickel, and in this one chromium and, say, molybdenum is added to very small quantities. So so depending upon, say, at a high temperature, this FCC phase is stable in a very a wide range of temperature and composition. So in high temperature region, say, FCC phase is stable, and into this, in FCC phase, if we are looking at for the, say, structure of molybdenum. So we are adding molybdenum. It's a body-centered cubic structure. So molybdenum with the crystal structure, which is BCC. Uh, it is BCC FCC are the same brevis lattice in the cubic crystal structure. So they are not the same crystal structure, but they are from the same. They are not the same brevis lattice, but they are same crystal structure, cubic crystal structure. So the molybdenum is compatible in that case with the FCC. If you look at crystal structure of chromium, so chromium is anyway BCC. So these two elements are compatible, and there are titanium, aluminum, and carbon with very small quantities, and in addition to that, boron and vanadium, they are also added into very small quantities. And what exactly is being done is there is a lattice distortion that is taking place, but the final phase is able to withstand all the temperature and pressure, and therefore this is used in various these high temperature uh, and high pressure, highly oxidizing environmental conditions. The other one is say Incolloy 925. So in this also nickel, iron, and chromium, these are the main components. In addition to that, molybdenum, titanium, uh, copper, carbon, aluminum, titanium are added, and we have this particular alloy, and we have Inconel 718, Vespa alloy. So we look at nine to five. We simply look at this. These are various usages of this Incolloy 800 or 9 to 5. So various applications or in the structure that is exposed to high temperature and high pressure oxidizing conditions. So alloys are used. We can look at various these alloys, and these are the various composition. You can see even very small say amounts of say boron, and here is the 0.05 weight percent of zirconium. There you did used to fine tune fine tune the properties stability at high temperature. Even a small change in the say high temperature stability is actually very uh, very significant when these alloys are used in the high temperature applications. So if you look at the high temperature as such, these there are super alloys. No, we have multiple elements that are added into the say nickel, iron, or cobalt, but there are these are refractory metals, as we discussed in this as a dopant in the superalloys molybdenum, niobium, tantalum, and tungsten. These are known as the refractory metals. These are not alloys, these are the refractory metals. Why these are known as refractory metals? Because they are having exceptionally high melting point. Niobium 2468 degree centigrade. Till this point, normal metals and alloys, everything basically melts down. Okay, and then molybdenum, even higher temperature melting point, 2623 degrees. Tungsten, highest among these metals. This is you might have seen the filaments, in the bulb, in the uh, uh, the heating elements. They are generally made up of the tungsten, because it can withstand 3400 very high temperatures. and then tantalum. These four metals are collectively known as the refractory metals because they can withstand temperature, very high temperatures of the order of 2700 Kelvin or greater than these. So these high temperatures are basically the stability, high temperature stability of these metals is very important. One reason because the interatomic bonding between these metal atoms is very strong, which accounts for the high melting temperature, and they are mechanically strong. Their tensile strength, yield strength, etc. is high, and therefore they can be used in at ambient as well as elevated temperatures. Tantalum and molybdenum are alloyed with stainless steel to improve their corrosion resistance. So some of the metals, for example, niobium may oxidize, forming vanadium pentoxide and VO2. Similarly, molybdenum MOO2, MOO3. So there are various oxides and tungsten trioxide. Okay, tantalum pentoxide, Ta2O5. So there are these metals too are susceptible to oxidation. So by alloying with the stainless steel, these metals are, the corrosion resistance is improved. And then we have noble metals. We know, I mean, we are familiar with the noble metals. Noble metals, these are expensive. In addition to gold, silver, there are other family. I mean, there's a platinum group with the other precious metals, and these are collectively known as the noble metals. They're expensive, they're precious, and they are superior or noble in the properties. Characteristically, they are soft, they're ductile, and oxidation. They have high oxidation resistance. To improve the mechanical properties, they are alloyed with copper to improve their strength. Noble metals, for example, silver, gold, platinum, palladium, rhodium, ruthenium, iridium, and osmium. So these are collectively known as the noble metals. Why they are known as noble metals? Because they have the superior properties. A superior property, basically the oxidation resistance, and from the ancient times, from the gold and silver, they have been with us as the noble metals, and because of their oxidation resistance and the very beautiful luster and all. But there are other metals that fall into the same category. Though copper corrodes, but this is also one of the noble metal. So, copper is added to improve the strength, but silver, gold, platinum, palladium, ruthenium, rhodium, iridium, osmium, etc. are the noble metals. Platinum is used in many applications in chemical laboratory as a catalyst. Many of the temperature measurement thermocouples are platinum rhodium thermocouples. So there are various applications of these metals. Okay, so among the noble metals, if you look at the gold, so gold is alloy or it's a pure. Have looked at here is noble metals are characteristically soft. They are soft. I mean, any metal for that matter, if it is pure, if it is say 99.9 or weight percent pure, it will inherently will be soft. Okay. Similar to the case of the gold. So although pure gold is sometimes used in electronics, gold jewelry is always a mixture of gold and other metals. So pure gold is usually quite soft, as discussed, and adding small amount of other metals make the gold hard enough to be used as a jewelry. Allowing gold with the different metals also affects its color. For example, this is the jewelry Yellow gold is a alloy of gold and copper with silver. Adding more copper than silver gives the redder shades. So this is not exactly yellow color, but it is alloy with copper to improve the mechanical strength. And then we have the white gold. It is an alloy of gold with nickel, platinum, or palladium. So this is the white gold on the right hand side. So this is white gold and the yellow gold, depending upon their it's again it's a gold, but because we are alloying it has been alloyed with various other elements, so their characteristic this color basically changes. Okay, so around 20%, 12% of the people may be okay. So there is this biocompatibility issues, but the white gold, gold and nickel and palladium alloy. So noble metals are precious. A precious metal generally is crystallized in the FCC. We'll see in the lectures to come that FCC, the metals with FCC crystal structure, they are they have the highest ductility. Why that is so? We look at it. This is if you look at the FCC crystal structure along the hexagonal crystal structure, its packing density is highest, close to 76% of the lattice volume is occupied by the atoms. So this is the highest possible packing density, and this actually reflects in the highest ductility of these metals. And this will be looked at in more detail when we look at the strength of the material in model 3. So FCC crystal structure, except for ruthenium, rhenium, and osmium, which have hexagonal close pack structure, but still highest packing density crystal structure are with the noble metals. The use of copper, gold, silver, platinum in jewelry and coinage has been known for the human history. So once the the oxidation resistance property were known, so these metals were used in the jewelry since the quite a long time in the history. Whereas you must have seen even today people throw the coins into the ponds, rivers, lakes, etc. Okay, even though there is no scientific reason for that, but initially we used to have the copper or copper coins that we have here in the picture on the left below is 1/4 anna in 1939. So these kind of coins were very common in the British India, and even before that, and for quite long time after that as well. Copper is very copper has a very good antibacterial kind of properties. So once the coin is thrown into the pond, so it basically kills the bacteria. You must have seen the copper tumblers, mugs for the drinking purpose at homes. But this tradition has actually continued till today, and stainless steel and other alloy coins are continue to be thrown into the pond, which is not say a scientific reason. Earlier it was a scientific reason. Okay, so coinage and jewelry, these coins have been used and being used till today. So this gold is useful because it has exceptional chemical stability and good electrical conductivity, highest electrical conductivity among the metals. Gold is a good scientific material for contacts for many in the computer chips or the integrated circuits. Gold is used as a contact. So even in the research purpose, gold or silver contacts are very frequently used because they have the high electrical conductivity or very minimal electrical resistance. So it doesn't basically affect the material properties and being inert. Gold is best optical reflector throughout the infrared region. for the electromagnetic spectrum. You must have seen the rocket. So see, for example, you can see these are the rockets that are covered with the foil. Yeah. So all these rockets are covered with the foil. So why this is done? Because there are so much, electromagnetic radiation in the outer space. So in order to prevent the damage to the rocket because of these exposure to these solar radiations, these rockets are covered in with the metallic foil, even the rovers, etc. So this is what this topic, why gold is in space technology. You can look at this. You can look at have a look at this link if you're more interested. I've just pasted it here. Okay, so there are various applications of these noble metals. And if you look at the stability of the gold alloys, so there are low gold alloys, there are high gold alloys, depending upon what is uh, the the alloying element. So if you have copper is added into the gold, this is basically the gold copper phase diagram. So what happens, the say melting point of copper is close to 1100 degrees centigrade, and gold is also close to the same temperature, little lower. You can see this, yeah, 1064. 1085, so they are pretty close. So what it says, as the more and more copper is added, so there's a 10%, 20 atomic percent,
Excuse me, sir.
1460. So with the increase in the atomic
Excuse me,
percentage
sir.
yes, Vikrant.
Sir, why it is not covered in with copper? Why it is covered with gold when the copper have maximum melting point?
Sorry, you're talking about the rocket.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, Vikrant. Which particular application you're talking about?
Rocket covered with gold foils.
Yeah, so rockets are covered in the gold foil because they have very good uh, uh, ability to absorb the solar radiations.
Because of its temperature now.
It's not about temperature. So gold is the best optical reflector throughout the infrared region of the electromagnetic spectrum. See, thermal radiation obeys the same laws that are the visible radiation obey. So if you need to prevent the heating of the rocket, the IR radiation need to be reflected. Okay, so this is the best reflector among the other metals, and so this is used as a optical reflector. So optical reflector, because it is uh, it is
Sir,
a
when
yes.
these space probes are rushing through the space, they are at very high speed. Okay.
Your voice is not clear. It is
When the space probes are rushing through the space,
rushing through the space. Okay.
they are at very high speeds. Like
Yeah, very high speed. Yes.
why why they don't get heated over due to the friction?
No friction. There is no air. There is nothing. I mean, it's an absolute vacuum. There is no friction. See, if you remember the Kalpana Chawla episode, the aircraft Columbia burned only when it entered the atmosphere. Outer space, there is nothing. So there is no friction, there is no heating. Only source of the mechanism for the thermal transport is conduction, convection, and radiation. So when there is an conduction and convection, it's medium dependent. So in the outer space there is no medium, only radiation is the source of thermal energy. So radiation, to prevent that also, these optical reflectors are used. So the temperature of the aircraft doesn't, the rocket doesn't increase.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So we were talking about the copper gold phase diagram. So what it actually means, so if this from 50 to 60% of copper is added into gold, we have lowest of the melting point, close to 900. The alloy which was melting at 1085 and 1064, this 1085 and 1064 now has been stabilized to melt at 900 degrees centigrade. Okay, so this is useful. You can save a lot of thermal energy, and they are good. I mean, they are the properties of these for dental applications. They have the same kind of properties, and they form because they have the same crystal structure, so they form the solid solution. And at a lower temperature they do have the at the high temperature random solid solution, at the lower temperature ordered solid solution. So this solid solution will be looking at in the second module, but right now the aim of this slide is to know that copper and golds are alloyed in a various proportions in say in dental applications. If the gold and copper is, I mean, there is a silver is added into that, so what we have is this triangle that represents the ternary system. Ternary means 3. So what happens in this, there is this alpha phase, and up to this concentration. So there is a small, this is basically silver, this is copper. So very small amount of silver and copper added into gold can keep the FCC phase stable, but beyond this composition range, which is say this is 10 to 30, close to 38 atomic percent. I think this is wait a minute. I think it's not 1, 2, 3, 5. Yeah, 5, 10. So this is close to 20. So close to say 18 atomic percent or so. If the total composition of these is beyond this, then it's it beta phase that is stable. That means if you look at the alloy as such, there has to be a single phase with the maximum allowed solute approximately 18%. So if it is 19%, then the extra 1% will stabilize, will precipitate out, and you will have the two phases, alpha plus beta. So there are type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 4 kind of alloys, which is given here. And so if it's 83% of copper, then it is type 1, otherwise type 2, the type 3 or type 4, depending on how much is the relative percentage or relative amount of gold into that particular alloy. And accordingly there are various properties. There's a non-heat hardenable or heat hardenable kind of alloys, and they are used in the only there are crown wedges, etc. And depending upon what kind of alloying element is used, so gold, copper, silver, palladium, platinum, zirconium, the property that is obtained is say corrosion resistance, hardness, uh, contact orange to copper, increase melting point on hardness, or increases melting point, and zinc prevent oxidation during melting of ore. So there are these various things. I am more interested to talk about this. We have been looking at you know gold or the precious metals are measured in the carat. So what exactly it means, carat? So carat, if the gold is 24 carat, it is 99 out of 1000, 99 999 parts or 995 parts gold, and then other 5 or 1 part is these other additives. For 23, this limit is 958. For 22 carat, 916. So how with the carat, how the composition basically changes, composition of the gold in the alloy that changes. But it is say 18 carat, then only 75% of the alloy is gold, and other is the all the other added metals. And accordingly, say it's a 24%, again 99%. For 18 carat, only 75% is gold, and so on. So 6 carat, only 1/4 is gold. So like this, the carat or the carat chart is, purity chart is determined. And this is about it. If you have any doubt, any question, please